Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have another awesome review for you from the brand Seiko. A little bit about them. Of course, they were founded back in 1881. They are Japanese in origin and now have factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to high end. And honestly, this is one of their entry level watches. I think a lot of their more high-end stuff is getting a lot of coverage these days, so I'm extremely delighted, really, to share with you a model that's under 200 bucks. A Meca-Quartz model at that, guys. So a little bit about Meca-Quartz watches. Of course, there has been a real boom in micro brands putting these movements inside a lot of their watches. Most notably, you got brands like Autodromo charging around 700 bucks for watches with these movements. What makes these movements special is that although they have quartz timing mechanisms, they actually have a manual gear train for that seconds hand, so it's not engaged through buttons but actual mechanical pushers, and the thing actually goes, it actually snaps back. It's actually really cool, and it's something that I find very, very enjoyable from a bit of a fidget factor, and honestly, this is cool. It's an in-house watch with a great look, and it's actually extremely affordable. I picked this one up specifically from Sakura Watches. I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you guys can get these at awesome prices. It's actually only $184 directly from Sakura, so make sure you use the link versus just trying to search, because this is the quickest way you can get these probably before they all fly off the shelves and disappear, because you guys might remember some of the other watches that were from Seiko that were affordable with Meca-Quartz movements sold out pretty quick once people started figuring out which models to search for. So with all that said, let's go ahead and take a closer look. Okay guys, now, whew, this thing's awesome. You guys might remember this whole Meca-Quartz kick for this channel all started out with this little bad boy. Don't even bother looking for it, it's gone. You'll never find it again. Actually, funny thing is I recently put it on that Partners Jubilee that I put on the Alpinist, so I'm even breathing even more life into this. But essentially, this is the watch that started the craze of Seiko Meca-Quartz, and then of course eventually microbrands found out about it, started putting the same movements into their watches, and the next thing you know, bam! These things, these movements are all of a sudden being highly appreciated and highly valued. And here's one of the reasons why. Look at that. Bam! So, nice little snappy snap back to place. It's not sweeping back because of that mechanical gear train. So that's really, really cool. Of course, the specs did fly across the screen, but this is just under 40 millimeters at 39.8 millimeters in diameter. It has an 11.6 millimeter height, and then it's stainless steel, brushed and polished very nicely. Man, it's for a watch that's under 200 bucks, guys. That's not bad, okay? Okay, yeah, it has mineral crystal, solid case back, hollow end links, and probably even hollow links, but decent enough. You know, you do have, the links are a little bit long, and then you do have some micro adjustments, though you don't have half links. That's not great. There's just push pin connectors. But again, this is a super cheap watch. You can, and the nice thing is, with 20 millimeter lugs, you can just throw this on a strap, or you can even maybe try your luck fitting another metal bracelet on it. I think this thing looks really, really great. Now, as far as this, one of the nice features also is that they have this really great black coated tachymeter scale bezel. So it definitely adds more of that kind of motorsports inspired aesthetic, which I think is great. I love the color play on here, the multi-dimensional dial. This thing just feels more expensive than it actually is. Now, a couple of more details about Meca-Quartz Seikos. This is actually the 8T63 versus the 6T63 that you saw in the other Seiko that I pulled up onto the screen earlier. This one actually is a bit better. It's a little bit more accurate and also has basically a low battery function where it'll let you know that it's running out of batteries. So it's actually even more advanced. So I think it's nice to know that Seiko has actually been improving on these over time, and you're not just getting some really kind of old set here. There's levels to it, so I think that's really great. The nice thing is also you do get 5th second basically intervals there, so this thing's ticking about 5 times a second. You have that nice sweep to it. Basically, there's a multi-headed lever that will disengage and snap back to instant 0 versus sweeping back to 0, which is something that is much more common for quartz chronographs. So I think that's really nice. Basically, the chrono mechanism consists of 20 individual parts similar to a traditional mechanical chronograph gear train. So basically, they just put a mechanical chronograph gear train, laid it right on top of a quartz movement, and bam, you have Meca-Quartz. Kind of like Mecha-Godzilla in a way. No, not really. Not at all, besides that they're both Japanese. As far as some of the details, when you go to the case back, it's solid, it's etched. It's nothing to write home about, but you know what? It's nicely executed. It's not something that's I can complain about. It's just not much to look at. So, you know, kudos on that, because sometimes you get weird, uncomfortable, you know, elements. As far as comfort goes, that's one where Seiko is always doing a great job. Ergonomics are really always at the forefront of Seiko designs. Now, as far as the kind of dial hands and lume and all that side, you do get nicely applied indices, as you can see. You get that blue kind of slate gray sunbrush dial. And depending on how you look at it, what light you're looking at it in, it's really meant to be gray, but I feel like there is just a touch of that kind of blue slate. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you see it? Do you see some blue hues in there? For me, I do, but that could just be my eyes. But for me, it does have that. And then you have your typical 4.5 date there tucked away. The nice thing is you do have the negative date disc with the white font over black disc, which flows very, very well with the rest of the dial. Now, this is water resistant to 100 meters, which is great. Of course, you can get some splashes, do a little water sports, not a big deal as long as you're not, you know, trying to submerge this puppy for too long. Now, again, when we go back to kind of the bracelet, it's nothing special, but it's not bad considering it's under 200 bucks. You got 20 millimeter lugs, this OEM bracelet that's pretty hollow, but it has a nice, decent 20 to 18 millimeter taper, and I really can't be mad at it for the price, especially considering you can put really like a high-end strap on here, and all of a sudden this thing is gonna look like $1 million bucks. Look at that dial. It's already looking like $1 million bucks, and it feels like it too. Man, that lacquered finish on that black coated bezel with the tachymeter scale, there's something about it. It just feels a lot more high-end than it actually is, which is always a nice feature, is when you feel like you're getting a deal. So many people complain about Seiko and, you know, their quest for success and moving up market and selling nicer products. Everybody wants them to just make their products nicer, but don't raise the prices with that. Here, you don't have to worry about that. It's actually super affordable. And it's nicely done. This is the type of watch that got a lot of people to fall in love with Seiko. It's a cheap watch that's not built super cheap. So with that said, let's actually go ahead and get this piece on the wrist. All right, guys, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing wears nice and clean. Again, just a hair under 40 millimeters. Even I put a little bit more arm in there. It's one of those things. It's a chronograph, right? There has to be some legibility to it. There's a lot going on. So with all that information on the dial, of course, you're going to have some space. And I think the nice thing is here, nothing really feels crowded. Everything feels really nicely spaced. Let's do this again just because it's fun. Let that run, and then as you can see on the wrist, it just wraps really nice, guys. I mean, I think some of you might have already turned off the review because you're looking for the links. You want to pick up this guy because the price point, and that it's a Seiko, a Meca-Quartz Seiko that's in stock. You can actually buy that is actually modern. This isn't some old stock piece that you're gonna have to dig up and fight for on eBay. So I think that's another really great thing. Really classic, of course, Seiko styling there. The links are a bit long, but you know what? It works. Lays really nice, wraps nicely. Not too tall on the wrist. Looks great at multiple angles. You can see here, sitting really nice and flat. Come up a little closer. And yeah, this thing, nice mobility. It's not hindering anything. Feels good, and you do get a micro adjust click if you need it. It's one of those things where it's tough to get it on perfect, but this thing would look killer on, on a lot of different straps. So definitely don't let that be the thing that stops you. Honestly, if this thing was sold without a bracelet, I'd still recommend it at the price, because you can always just put it on a strap with the 20mm lug width, which is absolutely great. This thing just really wears very comfortably. Maybe in hand it can feel a little bit small, but I think one of the nice things that visually helps with the size and the feel of substantialness is the fact that they have the blacked out bezel. If that was a steel bezel, it would shrink down the dial a little bit, and it would probably make it feel a little bit smaller. I think it actually feels right in that Goldilocks range, really, as far as a sporty chronograph should go. I love that it's infused with that classic racing motorsports aesthetic, and it has that very addictive chrono action. So you can't argue with that. Let's actually move on to some low light transition and Lume. Okay guys, we'll go ahead and hit the lights. As you can see, the nice thing is this guy actually has some usable Lume on it, which is a nice touch. You don't always get that, especially in these cheaper watches. So nice thing, you get the functionality, and you can even see that you do have a nice bit of orientation, that double Lume pip at the 12 o'clock. That's why I do like to offset the watches for the low light transition. Also, it gives you a little bit more look at the bracelet itself, so you guys can kind of watch the less than optimal lighting gliding over the brushing to get an idea of the quality of the fit and finish, apart from the more washed out look you're gonna get when you do have the studio lights telling the story. Now, another nice thing is you can see really how everything renders from a color aspect under less than optimal lighting, because the studio lights do a much better job of kind of recreating direct sunlight versus some more realistic lighting. And then another nice thing is we can get down and get direct on it. We can look at some of the more harsh lighting conditions and really take a look at that brushing and polishing to kind of see how it renders. And you can see this light is much less forgiving, and it still looks great, guys. I gotta say, very impressed. Man, I'm actually really liking probably about this amount of light in there. It's crazy how legible this thing is at just that with that much light on it. I think that's really telling from a design aspect, and the color combination is gorgeous. I don't know, let me know what you guys think. You see in blue, you see in gray, you see in slate blue, slate gray. Let me know. All right, guys. Now, as far as model variants go, I can't really tell you if there are any. Honestly, this thing was quite a lucky find. So if you guys want to dig around and kind of play with some of those nomenclatures to see some other model variants, hey, you're more than welcome to. As far as comparable models go, there's a ton of micro brands out there, of course, with that motorsports theme, the vintage styling, and they're just using this same movement, and they're putting them in much more expensive watches. And that's nice. I mean, typically they have better bracelets. If they have bracelets, better finished cases, all these things, better specs, sapphire, all that, and a bag of potato chips for VK powered automotive themed chronos. No discredit to those, but honestly, this is just a fraction of the cost, and it's technically an in-house spec. So it's hard to kind of argue with that. And for me as a collector, it's actually a little bit more fun to kind of pull out these little weird references that not a lot of people know about and be like, somebody whips out an $800 Meca-Quartz chronograph at a watch meet, and then you're rocking in your watch roll something like this that has the same movement that you picked up under $200. It's a JDM model, so it has the rareness, it has the fun kind of JDM appeal. There's a JDM-ness about it, just for Japanese domestic market, for those of you that aren't big into that scene. So I mean, really, bottom line here, you get a lot of fun in a very stylish and affordable package. Actually, my wife's been eyeing this watch, and it's probably going to end up on her wrist. So there just goes to show that this thing has some crossover power. This is a watch that I think even non-aficionados can appreciate, just for the general aesthetic. And then hardcore fans, there's so many weird, quirky things to enjoy about this, then why not partake? So with all that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.